Welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Zone. I'm your co-host, Tom Spitalere, here with my co-host, Bob McDermott. And today, the show is based on the paranormal, the cryptozoology, witches, and we bring people in from across the pond, across the world, and anybody that's tuning in, keep tuning in. If you have any questions, you can always email us at the Paranormal Zone. Today, we have a great guy on. His name's Mike Stevens from Granite Sky. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Good, Tom. Good. Glad to be here, both you and Bob.
Yeah. Long time.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Not too bad, my friend.
There you go, my friend.
Yeah, we've known, Bob and I have known Mike, 10, 15 years at least, if not longer.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, we go back away.
Yeah, quite a while. I know we all look like such young bucks. It's been a long time.
Yeah, keep that one for yourself, Mike.
Yeah,
I've lost more hair than I know what to do with. All right, Mike. What is Granite Sky? I know you've been on my TV shows. You've been on Bob's show before, but this is a different audience we got now. We're World Wide now. So what is Granite Sky?
So simply, it's a support organization for anybody who's ever had any type of UFO or extraterrestrial encounter. We deal with people who've had abductions to people who've just had a sighting that's changed their worldview, and everything in between. From people who've had a positive outlook on their experience, people who have very negative PTSD symptoms from their experience. So we try to encompass all of it to look at the bigger picture around the phenomena.
All right. Mike, when did you personally get the interest in UFOs? I know you go way back, and I think that our audience, our listeners should know that you are renowned in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont as being one of the few people that offer a support system to people that have either been abducted, had an observation, or even a visitation. But when did you first get interested in UFOs?
I like to say I've been interested in them almost as long as they've been interested in me. My first memory of anything dealing with this type of stuff happened around the age of 3.5. And so it's been a part of my whole life. And so it's always kind of been with me.
Wow, that's interesting. And without getting into details, if you don't want to share it, it's fine. Did you have your own experience at a young age?
Yeah, so the experience I was just talking about was the first time I remember anything happening. And I've had a lifetime of encounters, even up to a couple months ago. So
Wow.
I'm free to share if that's what we want to do. But if we have other questions we want to get to first, we can do that too.
No, that's interesting, Mike. So you've had the experiences now for about 23 years?
Yeah, I wish.
Because you're younger than me.
Not by all that, but
no, all kidding aside, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I've just known you too long to had to throw that in there. But yeah, you want to talk about that experience if you want to. You don't have to.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly fine. So the first time I remember anything like this happening, it was about 3.5, maybe 4 years old. It's hard to tell exactly because you don't really, keep check of your own age at that time in your life. But we were at my grandmother's house in Southampton, New Hampshire. Small little town. Nobody really knows where it is. So it's just north of the Amesbury border in Massachusetts. There was some type of family function going on. There were like aunts, uncles, and all that type of stuff there. The way my grandmother's house is set up, you walked in through the kitchen, and then it went to a dining room. And then behind the dining room, there's a 3-season porch that overlooked the backyard, and you can see the woods behind the house. As soon as I walked by that 3-season porch, in a sense, the backyard. I had this like internal like emergency calling that I had to get outside. I couldn't explain it. It's just one of those things where you knew you had to get outside. I don't remember how I got outside, but I remember getting outside and finding my cousin already standing in the driveway. And she's only a couple months older than I am. So we're both these two young kids standing in the middle of the driveway. And I just want to add in, like, we weren't raised like that. The fact that one of us would have made it out the door would have been a miracle. The fact that two of us did, it that's its own enigma in itself. But anyways, we find myself standing in the driveway. My cousin's there. We kind of look at each other like, what are we doing? What's going on? Because it's not like we had a secret plan to sneak out and go play in the yard or something. The next thing we know, the wood line behind my grandmother's lawn, it just gets filled with this bright red light. All you can see is like the shadows of the tree trunks and branches. This light starts to move upward through the trees till it breaks the tree line, and then we can finally see this object. And it, for lack of a better description, it's your classical saucer-shaped object, dome top, dome bottom. From there, it makes its way over to us at the end of the driveway. But you don't hear any engines, or there's no, like, jerky motion of a, propulsion system or anything. It's almost like somebody flew a paper airplane. It just, like, glided effortlessly towards us. My grandmother had a large tree at the end of her driveway, and it parked itself kind of next to that in the air. It didn't land when I say parked. It was probably about 40, 50 feet up in the air, probably about 40 feet in length, probably half of that from top to bottom. And this is when we first get a real good look at it. What we see, or I should say, I can speak for my cousin, is a row of lights around the middle of this object, and they're strobing around, but it's not like individual balls. It's almost more like a liquid or something. It's just very fluid, flowing, very fluid, and there's soft whites and maybe hints of blues and things like that. After a few minutes, or it felt like minutes, maybe it was only seconds, we had this intense feeling of being watched. And when this feeling sets in, this light bar changes to more reds, oranges, starts changing colors faster, and a row of lights a row of windows appear above this light bar above it, almost like when you open your car door at night and you have that little interior light. Something like a soft yellow light came on in this thing that revealed a row of windows. We could make out humanoid figures from the, shoulders up. And you can see shoulders and a head, but you couldn't see any features. In my standing memory, the next thing I remember after that was this object at the other end of the driveway by the street side. It was hovering above the telephone pole. It sat there for a second and then just shot off into the sky, and not got smaller because it was getting farther away, but as it moved away, it got smaller till it just disappeared to a dot and vanished. And that was my first encounter with anything like this.
Wow.
Mike, do you think that you and your cousin were specifically targeted?
Yes and no. I do believe it tends to run in families. Many years later that I would find out that we do seem to have a family history. So why our family in particular, I don't have an answer, but I don't think it was necessarily because it was just me or her. I think it was something that came through the bloodline.
Okay, Mike, you help people, you don't necessarily go out and investigate UFO sightings. Is that correct?
Yeah, if something happens fresh and we're in the air and we get to it, absolutely we'll go look at it. But more so, it's not like going to a haunted location. They don't like hang out with you to come investigate it.
They don't.
But yeah, more so we deal with the people who have had their encounters after the fact.
So, do you see a lot of familiar accounts? We have friends. I'm not going to mention the names. I'll mention two sisters, and they seem to have a lot of accounts. And you know who I'm talking about, Mike. I'm not going to mention their names.
Absolutely.
But does it seem like that this happens a lot with there's familiar encounters, generations of it?
From what I've researched, there seems to be. I mean, there's also people who, don't seem to have that. But it's, again, one of those things. The family's just not reporting it. People are just starting to open up about this stuff where, as before, people wouldn't even talk about ghosts or things like that. It's so taboo. And now we're starting to see it on the news and, the congressional hearings and things like that. So people are starting to be more open. So we don't know, we can only go with what's reported to us. We don't know what's not reported. But I do believe there are probably a couple, handful of cases that are, wrong place, wrong time situations. But I do believe a majority of at least the ongoing abduction scenarios are bloodline or genetic related.
Which, Tom, you and I have talked about this, and I have talked about it with Mike too. With all of the people that you've heard stories from in your support groups, is there a commonality that you can tag it to that says, for example, let me give you an example. The majority of people say, I lost time when I was abducted, or I lost memory when I was abducted, or the description of the spacecraft. Do you find that tracks person to person pretty much?
Yes, and there are some certain similarities. And sometimes that's the only reason they think to even come to a group like ours, because they're like, oh, this matches this. Maybe I should look into it. The reason I love doing the group setting is because sometimes somebody will say something that's not in any of the written literature. It's not popularized or well known by, what people think an abduction is. And they'll be like, have you ever heard of it? And sometimes even I'm like, no. And then either somebody will shout out from across the room like, yes, that happened to me. I didn't realize this was connected to that. Or, next thing, 2 weeks later, somebody else will come in and say the exact same thing. And, they don't know the other person. They didn't work this story out. So I like doing the groups because it starts to really show us how big the phenomena is. And it's not just this cookie cutter thing that they told us an abduction was.
Yeah. The few people, Tom, Mike, that I've talked to, and it's a handful, 3 to 5 folks that have been abducted. One of their biggest problems, Mike, is that they don't have an outlet to tell their story to, that they're comfortable they'll be believed. And it almost becomes as important to them as the actual abduction.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue, Bob.
No, that even a spouse or a family member or somebody just doesn't believe their story. So the frustration is almost as great as actually being abducted. And it's sad because they're dealing with a lot of anguish on 2 fronts. Do you find that with your groups?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why our slogan is people, not proof. We don't try to prove it. We just want somebody to be able to get through the day. The alien things, the connecting or UFO, extraterrestrial, whichever terminology you want to use, might be the reason we got together. But once we're together, we're all humans, and that human side of it is so much huger. Because, like you said, this destroys families, it destroys relationships because people don't believe and they're not open to it. And, you know, at the end of the day, we just really want people to be able to get through the day. Like, I can't stop you from being abducted. I can't prove whether you were or weren't, but I can be that open ear and put you in a room of open ears of people who've been through similar, you know, if not the same. And you can voice that and not feel crazy. And so much of that is bigger than anything else.
And I think that's the real big issue. When you look at, even in with paranormal, as you know, Mike, it can happen the same way. But, you know, I think of what you just said, and I think about what happened back at the end of Vietnam. I wasn't born yet, but I got plenty of friends that served in Vietnam and came home and got spit at and not believed, and baby killers and all that other happy garbage they were throwing at the time. It's the same thing. These people are being abducted. They're not being believed. Look what happened to Fire in the Sky. Travis Walton. Big story. I mean, it's been on every show in the world. No one believed Travis what happened. They didn't even believe his friends.
Yeah.
So does that drive you to a question that says, if you're abducted, I know, Mike, and I really do respect you because you don't look for proof or evidence. You take people at their words, and I admire that skill. But with the abductions we're seeing in the last 10 to 15 years, will we start to see some hard evidence coming out of some of these abductions, such as implants, scars, that kind of stuff on people that were abducted?
I mean, I think it's always been there. It's just the general public or the academic scientific community has just never wanted to touch it or really look at it.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, I talked to somebody who was abducted that said that there was an implant placed in a certain area in her head, and that a doctor actually surgically removed it, but then all of the records and evidence were lost when she went back to ask where it went. And that has to be some sort of a government involvement. Do you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, I would think so. There's been plenty of people who've had, you know, the X-rays, this, that, and actually had the object removed. You know, we're learning slowly as we go on. These things seem to disintegrate if you just put them in a tray. You have to actually keep them in blood, it seems, to keep them viable because they seem to be bioengineered. While they are a mechanism, they also thrive off and it's the other weird thing with implants is, you know, normally if there's a foreign body in the human body, it makes scar tissue around it. It gets infected. It tries to fight it off. And we don't see that with these implants. And I believe I have one in my leg, and I can actually hold a K2 meter and set it off with it.
Really? Wow, that's amazing. You know, I have X-rays of somebody that sent them to me that was an abductee, and the X-rays show clearly 3 metal items in the pelvic region. And I showed them to a doctor one time, and I'm not going to say who he or she was, but I showed them to a doctor, and he made the comment he had never seen anything like that before. Now, I have those pictures. Okay, I saved them. So why do you think these items are being implanted on people? Is it tracking? Is it monitoring DNA? What do you think that item that's being implanted is doing?
Yeah, so I mean, for years and years, everybody thought they were tracking devices, and I've kind of thrown that idea out personally. Like, they might help with that, but there seems to be some other conscious connection with it where they can find you no matter where you are or what you're doing. So I don't think it's that. I think it's more of I think it's more collecting, like, so we don't know what they're actually doing or what information they're after. But I think it's keeping track of information, it's probably more complex than like pulse rate or things like that. But I just don't know what else to use as an example. But I think they're taking biometric data, because a lot of these cases, once they dive into them, they might only remember one thing to start, and then once they start delving into it, and they realize that this has been happening a lot longer than it has. So I think it's tracking long-term data.
All right.
Mike, do you also think it has to do with maybe reproduction? Because I've talked to abductees, contactees, whatever word you want to use. The one word you'll never hear out of my mouth again is UAB, I think is a joke. I will always call them UFOs. But do you think they're actually aliens being reproduced looking like humans? Mingling with us.
You're clearing this topic for a long time. Well, when I was first getting my feet into it, I was trying to figure out my own stuff. I didn't want to. I always wanted to be grounded. I hope I still am.
You are.
The more you look into it, the more you realize that seems to be, at least with one particular species or entities, I don't know which word we want to use, that seems to be the major goal of it. If you look back before Betty and Barney Hill, like one of the first reported abduction cases, not talking about like ancients or Native Americans and stuff, because they seem to get along well with them. But once we changed to this abduction narrative, before Betty and Barney Hill, you had the Antonio Villas case, and he basically said, yeah, no, they came down, they took me, they had sex with me, dropped me off. And everybody said, you're crazy. That's just too far-fetched fantasy. We won't believe it. You get Betty and Barney Hill, and it seems like Betty had a pregnancy test, or we used that type of pregnancy test. Barney had some type of procedure, things put around his groin, which grew warts and stuff around after. And the more and more cases you look at, the more and more the reproductive end of it, as crazy as it sounds, seems to be true. I actually believe I have a daughter up there. It was a couple of years ago, probably closer to 10 now. I was just sitting there having dinner, watching a movie with my girlfriend at the time. And it was something like Ray, the Ray Charles movie. It wasn't like anything spooky or sci-fi. And I got up, I finished eating, and I got up to have a cigarette. So I went outside and had a cigarette, and all of a sudden it's just like emotion hit me, and I heard this voice, you have a daughter up here. And it just came out of the blue, but it was so intense. Like, I walked back into the house crying. She thought like something had happened. Well, I mean, I guess something did, but she thought something physical had happened. Like, what are you doing? I'm not a small guy. Like, for me to just walk back in the house crying for no reason, isn't normal. So I explained to her what had happened, and then a couple of years after that, I was setting up for an event, and so it was like 4 a.m. I was, just trying to make everything perfect, set up chairs and doing all this. And the way the facility was set up, I had to go downstairs, but then up a back flight of stairs to get out to where I smoked in the back. And I was looking at the stars, because I always do. And I was like, oh, ain't you twinkling a little too bright? And as soon as I said that star, I'll put that in air quotes, started swirling around in a circle. And I'm like, oh, nope, that's too much of that. I ran back downstairs. And as I ran back downstairs, I just heard laughter. And I'm like, now this place is haunted too. Like, I can't really deal with all this at once. So after I in the moment, that was my thought. But after I had time to like kind of digest it and think about it, I think that was actually my daughter from up there laughed at me like,
wow.
So that's
so crazy. I'll be the first one to say that.
No, you're not crazy, Mike. So that's interesting, though.
No, I think it's crazy at all.
We wish this wasn't the truth, you know?
No, so a daughter that's up there. Now, what I've heard is that they're actually on our planet.
Yeah, I do believe that, you know, that's the goal of it. I don't know the end goal. I kind of think they're ruining their planet, or it's the other theory that they are us, or they're us, you know, us from the future and all this stuff. And maybe some of that's true. But at any rate, you can see it from our side. Like, we're not going to make it on this planet forever.
Right.
And maybe they're in a similar situation. So they're trying to make something in the middle that can live somewhere else.
Right. Well, Mike, I figured you, me, and Bob here, we got at least another 100 years to live.
Oh, Jesus. I don't want another 100. I'm already 100.
Yeah, can we sell off our shares?
Mike, do you see a gender difference in the people that you interview? In other words, is there more females being abducted or males being abducted, or is it 50-50?
I personally think it's more 50-50. I definitely deal with more female clients, but I think that's because of, you know, just
the macho man.
The way boys are raised or were raised, that, you know, you're tough, you don't cry, you don't talk about your problems, you don't, you know. So I think that plays a factor into it, but I mean, I know plenty of male abductees as well. And when it comes to the hybrid and those types of tests, I mean, I definitely think the females have it so much worse. So I think that's why they're the ones who are willing to step out and say it more, because they've had it so bad and they need to. And it's one of those things, like, you know, people make fun of an abductee, but in a lot of cases, it really is rape, and nobody would dare laugh at a rape victim, but it's okay in this scenario, and that's just one of those things that drives me nuts.
Yeah, right. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah, they live in two different standards.
Exactly.
And
sure.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
But it's interesting to see if the reproductive end of this, if what they're doing is impregnating aliens, but you have to wonder if the DNA is mixed. Yeah, but if it's mixed, do they still have the same feelings and desires? So let's just go with the theme that there may be a daughter, on another planet. Does he or she have that desire to find their biological father or mother?
Yeah, well, I would assume so. And there's many cases of, people being shown babies or holding babies and then having it, have them ripped away from them.
Right.
Even though they look weird or not quite human, like there's something that connects, that says, oh, this is still me, this is still part of me. And which leads me back to, I can't take a giraffe and a dog and make a long-necked dog. Like, the genetics don't work that way. So they're either highly advanced in scientific manipulation or we are somehow related to them. But I think that's the part that scares people.
That don't scare me, though.
No, but wasn't there a theory that's been around for years that this planet, whatever that planet happens to be and what universe that's in, actually started life on this blue marble? That this was a big experiment tube, that aliens don't understand time, or they don't at least have time, that everything is, time is created by us. When somebody says 3 o'clock, we made that up. There may be a civilization out there that doesn't recognize time. So do they recognize our planet, their planet, is going to come to an end at some point, and they need to cross-pollinate a new planet to begin with. So they start life on Earth. Now, I know this goes up against religion. I get that. But they start life on Earth with the long-term plan to populate this blue marble as two groups together.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of buy into that. Like, time is a man-made construct because we're in this 3D body, and I'm not, a scientist, so nobody, come at me if you're using the word dimension wrong, but if these things are more, 40, 50, 60, you go up and down the chart, they're not going to be wrapped to our little version of time. It's kind of like if you have a DVD, the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie are on the same thing. We can only experience it one thing at a time here, but they might already know the ending, and they might be trying to, jump in and change it, almost like one of those Pick a Path books or something. I mean, again, I this is my personal views. I don't have the answers.
Bob, you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. It dropped. I don't know why.
You there, Mike?
Yep, I'm still here.
Sorry, Mike.
No worries.
So what were you saying, Mike?
Oh, I was just saying that I think they don't understand our constructed time, because our constructed time is only for us to live linear. I'm of the belief that, we're not humans with a soul. We're spiritual beings with, doing this 3D life to experience it. I think the whole thing is, you can have all the knowledge in the world about gardening, but you don't know a thing about gardening until you put your hands in the dirt. And I think, that's all life is. Like, this is not the beginning. It's not the end. It's just an experience.
It's just another time and place that we live.
Right.
Yeah, and doesn't that kind of tie into the string theory that you really cross through dimensions in a lifetime? That another world just like ours may be doing the same thing we're doing, just either ahead or behind us.
Right, and I also believe that if you're religious, you might call it a soul. If you're not, or if you're spiritual, you might call it, consciousness, whatever. But I think I could be living multiple. There's pieces of my soul everywhere. I could be a Roman soldier right now. I could be building a pyramid. I could be doing all this simultaneously, but I can't interpret all that here in this lifetime. I can only focus on this reality.
Correct. I agree with that.
Yeah. And if anybody tells you to understand that or have the answer, you should probably go the other way. But
Mike, why do you think that the government is, even today in 2024, still trying to cover up the existence of UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to define them as? Why do you think the government is so locked into not letting the public know about this?
I think that somewhere way back, they knew they existed. There were some meetings, some of the Eisenhower type stuff, where they traded technology to look the other way. And if they ever got found out, can you imagine the lawsuit or the class action lawsuit? If people, the trauma that's happened to people, if they found out the government said, yeah, we knew about this, we looked the other way because we wanted some new toys. I think that is one of the main reasons. Also, I think it's the power struggle. Everybody's free to believe in. You do you. I don't, but I also see organized religion as a power structure, much like government. So I think there's all these controls that they'll lose. Everybody's like, oh, we don't need a middleman.
Right.
So, Mike,
yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Mike, I had you on my other show last year, in July, I think it was, and that's when the government released how many UFO sightings there were, which I almost laughed. It was like 162 from the 1960s until last year, confirmed sightings. You have 162 a year just in the Portsmouth area of New Hampshire. What do you think of that? And then they added another couple hundred on. I don't know what the number's up to now, but I think it's close to 1,000. I believe that number is false to begin with. But why do you think they only said 100 in the beginning? Or, yeah, it was about 100.
Because they only cherry-picked military cases. Is why the number's so low. Our numbers are always going to be low. Especially in the New England region, because we're just stubborn, you know. I'm a born and bred New Englander, so I have no problem not picking on New Englanders. I know who I am. You know, we're just stubborn. This is not the type of stuff most people talk about. Maybe if you get them one too many beers around a campfire, they'll be like, hey, this one time this thing happened. But other than that, we don't really talk about this. So our reporting numbers are way down. So we can only go off the reported numbers to begin with.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, no, I think they cherry picked and they just wanted to, and you know, now they're backing off on it, but they still want to. I personally believe that their backs are against the wall. I believe a time is coming where you're not going to need disclosure, not from a government. I believe they're going to make themselves known to everybody, and that the U.S. government is, you know, just trying to negotiate that the best they can and not like put themselves in a bad space. The other thing people need to realize, this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not, the U.S. government does not have the final say. You know, this happens all over the world. And, you know, we have governments that handle it much better than I would say ours do. We have governments that hold it, you know, treat it much worse than we do.
Now, Mike, I think it was like 10 years ago. I can't remember. I found the old newspaper article once. I got them all. It was, I worked Tuesdays and Thursdays in Exeter, as you remember, years ago. And on a Wednesday, there was a sighting in Exeter. And then about 2 hours later, the same sighting, in less than that, maybe a half an hour, an hour later, a sighting in England. And the sighting in Exeter was cited by a former U.S. Air Force captain. You remember that one?
Yeah, because me and you have talked about it numerous times.
What year was that?
I don't remember the year, but...
It was all over the Seacoast papers, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
For about a week.
So I think there's two ways to look at it. Either the same object made it from here to England in, you know, the split of a second, you know, give or take, or we had two similar objects visiting two, you know, areas at roughly the same time. So either one is fascinating, but, you know, without having the radar to say, all right, it was the same object or just two of the same type object. But either way, it says something.
And what was interesting about that incident in Exeter, Bob and I discussed it one time. Bob and I talked about but with that incident in Exeter in 2010 or 11 or whenever it was you actually had kids that actually drew what they saw. And it was quite interesting because none of these kids seemed to have known each other. One kid in Hampton drew what he saw, a kid in Exeter, a little bit younger and older. They had like 4 drawings on the front page of the Hampton Union from 4 kids from 4 communities that didn't even know each other. And they all looked the same.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that I always amazes me when people say, well, the drawings that people have drawn when they've either were abducted or had an observation, that the vehicles are different. But if you looked at our Air Force, look how many different planes we have.
Mm.
I mean, hundreds. I'm guessing, but I got to believe there's 100 different aircraft in our military alone. So why would we think that aliens from another planet wouldn't have the same different aircraft?
Right.
I think when we look at drawings,
us versus them thing, like we say us versus them, but like there's a lot of them. So different thems, might typically drive different types of craft. If I've got to go pick up a couple sheets of plywood, I'm not taking a VW Rabbit, I'm going to get a truck or something. So you got to think different craft have different meaning as well.
Right.
Exactly.
And
Mike,
yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
And you know what's interesting? I can't say where I was, but I was talking to this guy who's got government contracts, and they develop drones. And I'm not talking about the drones we buy at the mall that fly for 20 minutes and they crash and they break. I'm talking about government drones. They have government contracts and stuff. And they say those drones can fly. Some of the drones they're building are flying faster than jets. Where is this technology coming from? I doubt it was a kid sitting in his computer. Some kid sitting in his computer developed this technology. There's no way. This technology had to come from somewhere else.
Well, I agree with you, Tom.
From some kid. We don't know that, they didn't download this message from somewhere else.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think if you look at technology, both the internet, cell phones, all of the technology we have today, if you track that over the course of 100 years, you'd see a big spike after 1940, 1950. And I think Roswell was right around 1947, if I'm correct, but in that time frame. So you have to wonder and ask yourself, how does this technology all of a sudden spike? We have the moonshot. We're placing stations in outer space. Cell phones, just everything in general. Something had to happen that some body said, hey, we can talk on the phone thousands and hundreds of thousands of miles away in seconds. And here's the technology to do that. I don't doubt that it didn't come from intelligent people. I just doubt it came from our intelligent people.
So, I mean, in the last 24 years, technology has really blown up. Just look at what we got. I mean,
yeah, it's fine.
We went from having, Atari and the one before that, to video games, or you can put where kids are walking around with glasses on, playing video games, shooting in the sky, where before you'd have to shoot at a monitor. ColecoVision. We went from ColecoVision, Atari to, and now look at our phones. I can't even do half the crap I want on my phone because this new thing that's on my phone, you got to go through that, and it's quite the disaster to get through. AI, that's it.
More technology.
AI technology alone.
To get the first men on the moon.
Right.
And then you look at the jump from how long it took to, from the Wright brothers, to, master flight to, 1969 when we landed on the moon, if you believe in that, And, but from there, how quick technology jumped.
Yeah, it's amazing. Mike, let me shift gears for a second because I'm interested in people that have been abducted and actually brought aboard some sort of a craft. Do they have memories of the craft itself or the beings that inspected them? And I mean, do they have a clear memory of that, or do you find that their memory gets erased somehow?
I've never known anybody that's had a clear memory from start to finish. Craft came in, full, memories inside the ship and then left. Most of the people I know have bits and pieces. Some don't remember anything happening. They just remember being on the ship. So, me personally, I remember a lot of beginnings and a lot of ends. A lot of my blank spots are in the middle, which I think I'm actually happy for. So it depends on the person and the type of encounter, but for the most part, nobody ever remembers it fully, front to start.
I wonder if that's a defense mechanism too.
I do. I think it's double-fold. I think the human brain wants to protect you from trauma. It's programmed to do that, so it doesn't let you remember or puts in something a little happier or something you can process. I mean, that's the bigger thing. It's not about whether it's happy or not. Like, your brain doesn't even know how to process it.
Right.
So it changes it into something you can process.
Right. Because
so you get stuff like screen memories and things like that. But I also think there's an added component where they don't want you to remember. There's some type of forced amnesia, or they're putting memories into your head, which to me makes me think they're not, it might be unpleasant, it might cause all these traumatic after effects, but if they were truly, truly evil, why would they not want us to remember? So I don't think, it's hard to go through, but I don't think the end plan is that they're evil. We just don't understand it.
Right. And that's what makes this field so interesting, because we don't know what to do out there.
Betty and Barney Hill under hypnosis, and they were hypnotized in 2 different locations and so forth. They told the same story. They, Mike, had a very clear hypnotic memory of what took place on that particular craft. Right. So it begs the question: do you think people that have been abducted?
They weren't claiming they were abducted. The hypnosis brought this out.
Right.
And they didn't even go to hypnosis per se because of their experience. Their experience happened in 1961. This gave Barney worried, and I think he worried himself to death, basically. He was giving him ulcers because he couldn't wrap his head around what had happened during those missing hours. So they finally sent him to hypnosis to try to see if they could give him some closure. Like, if you can remember what happened when you don't, maybe this will help. Obviously, it kind of went the opposite way, but, their incident happened in 1961. Barney only lived till 1969. He did not live that long after this. Anxiety,
I remember.
This really is what killed him.
And
that's what people don't realize. You're not just an experiencer when, it's happening. You have to deal with this every day of the rest of your life. You have to wonder if you're crazy or if you're not, or if they're going to come again. And, there's no safe space. How do you stop it? And that's why we try to give the support we do. That's what makes it so important. And again, it's a human issue.
Right. And I know people who live with that stuff every day, the PTSD and everything else. I'm surprised some of them are still alive today, and some of them are dear friends of mine. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just the amount of stress.
You look at our military, there's 22, veteran suicides a day.
Yeah.
And which is too much. But
exactly.
They can't get the help.
No.
And they know what those guys have been through.
Right.
How are you going to get any help saying, I saw a UFO?
Right, exactly. And not only that.
You're not. And that's where we need to excuse me. That's where we need to start, making a change, making a difference. I don't need you to believe. I just need you to listen to somebody,
and respect them. And respect them.
Correct.
And not laugh at them.
As a human, as a living being.
Right. I mean, just not only our military men. I mean, I know undercover agents from different brands of our protection services, from the local to the state to the feds to, well, they can't really talk about it. Some of my friends are no longer here. They were older friends, but they weren't much older than us. They were younger than Bob, and between, me, Mike, and Bob. And they're gone because alcoholism and everything else, kidney failure, because they never got the help. They were undercover DEA agents. Back in the day, you actually had to do the drugs.
Yeah, well,
and then they didn't help the mental aid.
Experience or community, because there is no help,
right,
or limited help, that you have to self-medicate, and it gets out of hand, and we all know how that cycle goes, whatever your poison is, drugs, alcohol, whatever, it just gets into a cycle that it doesn't help anything, it doesn't cure anything, and it takes a lot of us.
Right, and that's what's sad about this whole situation. I mean, to be honest with you, I've read, what's his name, Fire in the Sky. I've read many stories on that gentleman. To be honest with you, I'm surprised he's still breathing today with all the stress he's been under, because he's not a young guy anymore.
No.
He's in his, 70s, 60s, 70s?
He's gotta be now, yeah.
I mean, he's not a young guy. And to live with that type of stress and everything he went through, the failed life that he lived, it wasn't a failed life, but his personal life has always been in shambles every time I read about him.
Oh, and, it's kind of, how it goes. He kind of rose to the ranks in my community, at least, it's the top dog. So even now, people are still taking shots at him. They're still trying to discredit him, just because that puts their little name, they just want to connect their name to his name somehow, so they take shots at him. And you still see this going on with the Betty and Barney Hill case,
right?
And so it's disheartening because people want to speak out because they want to get off their chest. Nobody wants to be famous. Nobody wants to be known for this. But if it happened to you, and it can happen to somebody else, you want to give them, the ground to say, hey, yes, speak up. And then they see these people who, were at the top of the game still getting attacked. I don't know if I want that.
Right. You get some guy who's a leader, who's a local selectman, select woman, it doesn't matter. And, they see something. They get abducted. They get taken over. They don't want to lose their positions in the community after watching what goes on to someone like them, who are higher up in the community.
Yeah.
Mike, you've...
and that's the other thing. We're just real quick. Sorry, Bob. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
With our group, there is no, I don't care what your story is. You don't have to match mine. You don't have to match the person next to you. Your story is just as valid, whether it's one thing or you have a lifetime of them. It matters. If you need to talk to somebody, find somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, how can they reach you?
Yeah.
So we're old. We don't do most of the socials, but we are on Facebook. So that's just Grain of Sky Services. And then our website, you can find us on grainofsky.org.
All righty. Great. And Mike, you've helped so many people over the course of years. It's a very large number. Is the model of the group that you have, the support group, do you know of other groups across the United States that has that same model?
Yeah. Actually, some of the people Tom mentioned earlier, but we weren't going to say names. We still won't say the names, but we definitely say the name of the group.
Yeah.
There's another support group up in Maine called Starboard Support. They're not as active online and stuff as they used to be, but they're still very active. If they get a call and they're closer to me in New Hampshire, they send me. If I get a call, I send them up to them. We know a lot of people around the United States. There's no competition in this. We just want people to get help. So, I have friends in Pennsylvania, Arkansas, basically anywhere between our little network, we know somebody somewhere that you can talk to. No, you can't. Not that you can't talk to me like over the phone or email. We have the technology and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you need to physically talk with somebody, we probably got somebody somewhere close.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the message I want our listeners to understand, that they could contact you via one of the social medias you offer, and you may be able to refer them to somebody in their local area.
Yeah, absolutely. Like none of us have any, none of us do this for profit. Our dime, gas, time to, get to places and help people. But we have no competition between each other.
Yeah, it's great. That's great.
To help. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think what you're doing is admirable. That because like I said in the beginning of this broadcast, that I know of people that just are so lost because of their involvement, their abduction, their visitation, whatever it is, and they really have few people to talk to. And I have referred many people to your group, and I've always got great feedback from people saying how much help you were and the people around you were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Mike's a great guy.
Granite Sky is basically me. But if you have a military experience, I was never in the military, but I have people who were in the military who are close and I trust them, and I'll send you right to them.
Right.
I am not the answer. I'm not the end all to abduction support or anything, but I can at least point you in a direction where somebody can help you.
Right.
Right. And you give them a voice, Mike. That's the key to the whole thing. You give them a voice that they got somebody and peers in the same situation they were in that they could talk to.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, nothing against you guys. You guys are great. I've known you forever. But I don't necessarily like doing these types of things. I don't necessarily like, talking about it. But if it helps somebody else, if 100 people listen to this, or 200, whatever, I don't care if it's 5,000. If out of that one person's like, I got somebody to talk to, it's all worth it,
Right.
Sure. Absolutely. I agree.
All righty. We're coming to the end of a great show. We'll have you back on.
Mike. Thank you.
We're going to have Mike Stevens next Friday night at the Sandown Meeting House, right, Mike? So we'll see you there.
Yeah. I'm looking very forward to it.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, I am too.
We are looking forward to that. And this Saturday night will be at Haunted Hilldale Cemetery. So if anybody's listening wants to come on down, starts at 7:30. Ghost Hunt starts at 8. Other than that, Bob, I think I want to thank you and Mike, and thank you, my great co-host Bob over here, for being a great guy. And sorry we started.
Well, thank you guys. And Mike, this was a great broadcast, and I really, on behalf of a lot of people that need help, thank you so much for what you do.
Well, thank you, and I'm getting all the credit, but you guys you don't call us support, but you guys do the same thing when you go out to a case and you investigate a haunted location. You help those homeowners and families know that they're not crazy. There is something going on. So props to the things you guys do as well.
All right.
Well, thanks so much,
Mike.
And I look forward to seeing you Saturday night.
Friday night.
Yeah, it's gonna be Friday night.
Friday night. I'm sorry, Friday night, the 19th.
Yes. All righty. I will, other than that, want to thank everybody for tuning in locally and across the big ocean. I want to thank Mike for coming on, and Bob is my great co-host again. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you all in the paranormal. Good night.